Good evening. I'm Caroline Cronson, Special Events, and on behalf of Works in Process, we're delighted to welcome back ABT, who will be performing excerpts from their upcoming season. They'll be opening at the Lincoln Center on October 30th. You'll have a chance to mix and mingle with the extraordinary dancers and the panel at a reception after the show. The reception is going to be in the lobby here and upstairs at the back of the theater, and you're going to get to leave through the rotunda. Christopher Wool is opening on October 25th, so we're not yet back in the rotunda to have our receptions, but soon. I'd like to thank the dancers and the panel, and I would like now to introduce John Meehan, who's going to be the moderator, and who is the professor of dance at Vassar College. John Meehan.
Thank you, Caroline. American Ballet Theater is celebrated not only for its fantastic dancers, but also for its amazing repertoire. Much of this repertoire stays very current. Some of it lays dormant for some years. Other of it lays dormant for many years. Tonight we're going to talk about the process of reviving pieces that have been out of the rep for a short time and for a long time. We're going to see excerpts from ABT's upcoming season at the Koch Theater starting October 30th. We're going to start the evening off with a trio for three men from Stanton Welch's Clear, which was choreographed in 2001. And at the piano, we have Maestro David Lamarche. What a way to start the evening. That was Jared Matthews, Aaron Scott, and Luis Ribagorda. Thank you, guys. We actually put it on first because it was very hard to stay warm backstage all night and do that at the end. So I'd like to start the evening off by introducing our first panelist, Susan Jones, who's the redoubtable and fabulous ballet mistress at ABT. So you have been at ABT as ballet mistress for how long?
I was an assistant ballet master in 78, 79, which was my last dancing year, and then I became a member of the artistic staff in 79.
Wow. And
so a long time.
And you danced before that?
I danced for 9 years.
9 years for the company.
Mm-hmm.
So in that time, you saw pieces of repertoire come and go. The first piece we're going to talk about is Les Sylphides, and I imagine you danced that once or twice in those 9 years.
Yes, I certainly did. It was our staple opener for many, many, many years before I got in the company. And I had the benefit of having Dmitry Romanoff, as you did as well, who was regisseur for the company for its first, 35 decades.
Right.
Coached the corps de ballet at that time and the principals, and he had it from the horse's mouth. Right. He had worked with Fokine when Fokine staged ballet.
ABT season coming up is one of the strongest I've ever known in the fall. It has some incredible, well, all of the pieces are really must-sees. But two of them we can kind of lay claim to as the ABT. ABT has a particular version that is theirs. Of course, theme and variations, everyone thinks Balanchine,
right,
but it was created on ABT. And Les Sylphides is unique to ABT because...
Well, I sort of have my own personal view on this. It was created, of course, in Russia at the Mariinsky Chopiniana, it was called originally. Went to the Ballet Russe, Diaghilev's Ballet Russe, and came to Ballet Theater in our first year. And you know, we didn't have school dancers like the Mariinsky did. I think that perhaps that gave Fokine more of a platform to express himself further and really make a departure from 19th century ballet, which was what he was about. He wanted the expression of the unit to come through.
But Fokine actually put it on at ABT.
Yes, he did.
Which is what makes it unique. ABT had its own version.
Yeah, it was definitely, it's one of the many original versions, but it's ABT. ABT has the American original version.
Right, well, when it was done by the Ballet Russe, it was renamed Les Sylphides for the French audience.
Right.
And its opening cast was pretty spectacular. I think Pavlova, Kasavina, and Nijinsky.
Right, right.
In ABT's opening cast, Lucia Chase.
Lucia Chase was the prelude girl.
Was the prelude lady.
Oh gosh, I don't know who the others were, but
right.
Off the top of my head. But
that's.
But Lucia
was a long time ago.
Lucia was there, first ballet, first show.
But now, as ballet mistress, can I call you ballet master? Do you mind?
You can call me whatever you want.
Okay. As ballet mistress at ABT, you are pretty much responsible for Les Sylphides.
Yes, yeah.
You learned it from Dmitry Romanoff, who was ballet master when Fokine put it on.
Right.
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 So that was kind of, that's a pretty direct link, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's an honor to be in charge of the corps de ballet in particular. Don't know what that was
I
about.
think that was me, I maybe.
Okay.
Well, because I did it also, was taught by Romanoff as well. And, you know, one had this sense that he really knew exactly what he wanted and always insisted on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, before we were so rudely interrupted there, how long is it since Les Sylphides was in the rep?
We did it, I want to say maybe 2006 or
2006, so that's not so long ago.
8, I'm not really sure how long it's been now.
Because in the 70s...
It's maybe 6 years.
In the 70s, it was rarely a year went by without it being there.
Yeah, we did it. I think we did it pretty much until Shades, Bayadere Shades came along, and then we sort of segued over a little bit towards that for a few years in a row. But it was always, you know, the mainstay of the company.
Well, it's interesting. I guess Lucia liked to open with a white act of a ballet, classical ballet.
Yeah.
But when we did it at the Met, it always felt that the Met was really too big a house for Les Sylphides. It's such an intimate
perhaps.
piece.
I think so. I think it works much better. Certainly, it will be perfect at the Koch Theater, and I always liked seeing it at City Center as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And the music for Les Sylphides is Chopin, of course. And I think originally they danced to piano, but pretty soon it was orchestrated. David, if we can bring some lights up onto you, maybe you can talk a little bit about the orchestration of Les Sylphides. There is a version that most of the world does most of the time, correct? Can you hear me? We can hear you. Now we can see you.
For many years, ABT did a version of Les Sylphides that was orchestrated by a man named Roy Douglas, who was an English composer of film music, who, by the way, is still living at 105 years old. And but from about 1941 on, the version that ABT did until the late 70s was orchestrated by Benjamin Britten. That somehow was lost until recently. I found an old score in the library at ABT, and then I went searching in our warehouse in Secaucus, New Jersey, and found most of the parts. And the Benjamin Britten Society in London agreed to make a new set for free, because it hasn't been done in so many years. It was one of the earliest pieces by Britten. He was 24 years old when he made the arrangement. He had come over to the US. He was a pacifist and wanted to get away from Europe. Came over to Brooklyn and lived in a house on Meadow Street in Brooklyn with his partner, Peter Pears, and with Carson McCullers, the writer, and W.H. Auden, and Gypsy Rose Lee. And I think for a while, Oliver Smith, and I think that's how the connection was made between ABT and Britten. So he was paid $300 to make an arrangement of Les Sylphides, and we're going to do it during the
I wonder if he was ever paid.
Is he ever paid? Yeah. So it's interesting. Les Sylphides is essentially a romantic piece, but it was done with certain rules that Fokine had set up to rebel against classical ballet that was all about showing off steps and about telling a story.
About the structure of the classical structure of the corps de ballet. He wanted to depart from that, and get rid of the turnout. You know, in Sylphide, the ladies are more just naturally placed.
It's more organic.
Yeah, much more organic, yeah.
So in its day, it was quite revolutionary, even though now we see it and it looks very similar to Giselle. We don't really get a sense of the difference that Fokine imagined and presented to the world. Nowadays, we have very, very, very extreme technique dancers do. They're very stretched. They're very much into precision. Do you have to work against that when you set it?
I think, yes, I think you do to a certain extent. I think that you have to, I mean, I find that certainly you have to bring the dancer to Les Sylphides and make them understand that it's about, they're his poetry. The ladies are his poetry, the sylphs, the poet I'm referring to. And so they have to understand that they're not spirits, they're not, you know, normal women. They're really his inspiration, his center of creativity, and that they have to put that through the movement and understand that they can be, they don't, yes, there is a certain position of the head and a certain position of the arms, but they still, while they're in those poses, have to make it alive and vibrant. And I think hopefully we're honoring him by encouraging them and inspiring them to do that
Now, you normally work with the corps de ballet most of the time.
most of the time.
It's difficult, I think, to get everybody in the corps de ballet to feel alive and yet dancing in an ensemble. Is there a kind of secret to how you do that? Or?
Maybe. I don't. I've been doing it so long that I think that I thankfully have a very good rapport with the women, and they trust me and respect me, and it's very easy to. I want to inspire them always. I don't want to have a girl in the back who thinks she's just phoning it in because she's not interested or whatever.
No
I
one's
want to
looking
try
at
to
it, right.
involve them and make them believe that they're really not just the framework, but they're really the backbone of these ballets, and so that they understand their contribution,
Right.
and they respect that.
Right. Now, I asked you about technique being maybe a little too precise and clear and stretched out and big for romantic ballets. Do you think that modern dancers, young dancers, understand the romantic style less?
Maybe when they're first in the company, you have to put a little more work into it, but these are such coordinated, smart, savvy people. They get it and they see it. They see. Julie Kent is now also helping a little bit with Sylphide, and they've seen her. A lot of them have seen her perform it, so that's always a huge help. If they look around them, they'll get it. Yeah.
So we're going to see 3 excerpts from Les Sylphides. Can you just introduce them?
Yes, we're starting with the poet. Is
Yes.
that correct? So Joseph Gorak will be doing the mazurka.
Which is the only man. He's the only man in the ballet, and this is the only solo he
The
does.
poet. And then we'll be seeing the prelude danced by Veronica Part. And then the waltz, the pas de deux, which is danced by Isabella Boylston and Joseph. So,
Great.
Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. Good. Now I'd like to introduce Tina Fellhand to come and talk a little bit about Mark Morris's Gong, which is being revived for this season. Tina.
Hi.
So welcome.
Thank you. That light is so bright.
Light. That's good.
Yes.
Remember lights when you used to
Yes,
dance?
I do remember the lights.
So you danced in Mark's company?
I did. I danced with the Mark Morris Dance Group for 20 years.
20 years.
20
And
years.
did you just say to me before you were there for the very first?
I was in the very first performance of the Mark Morris Dance Group in November of 1980. I know that's hard to believe. And that was at the Cunningham Studio.
Where?
At the Cunningham
New
Studio
York?
here in New York. And I had the great honor and the wonderful experience of having nothing become a giant institution and a modern dance company.
So
And
you're from day one.
yeah, from day one.
So you had a lot
amazing.
of pieces created on you.
Yes, more than 50.
Whoa.
If
you
you,
were
read,
part
if you read my biography, yeah, it's more than 50.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Mark is kind of a volatile artist.
Mark is
Lots of fun.
Mark is a
What was
lot
it
of fun
like
as a
being there?
person. He's a wonderful, one of the funniest people I've ever met,
Right.
but also a very serious artist.
Right.
So we laughed, we cried, we ate, we drank.
And
It
you
was and he
spent many, many hours in the studio.
We did. We spent a lot of time in the studio, and we were very good friends. We still are.
Right. So you saw his works become more and more popular, and there became a demand for them, and you ended up
Yes.
going out and setting them. Did you set works before you stopped dancing?
I did actually. Early on, I started to help with rehearsal. I kind of had a knack for remembering things and learning things, and in a cooperative fashion, we all sort of helped. In the early days, I would help Mark make the rehearsal schedule. We would go to the thrift store to buy costumes. That changed later on. So one of the first things I did is I set one of his pieces. Gosh, it was in the early '80s.
Do you remember which
Yes,
company?
I do. The Repertory Dance Company of Canada in Vancouver, Canada. And then
Was that a good experience?
it was a good experience. I really enjoyed it.
Did you over-prepare?
I probably.
Because it was your first
It
time?
was my first time, so I probably over-prepared. And that was before you really used video in the
Right.
same way that we do now, video and DVD. And then I started, when Mark started making ballets, I went as his assistant when he made one of his first ballets.
In San
His
Francisco,
first ballet for
probably.
ABT,
Oh, right.
which was Drink to Me Only with Thine Eyes, which was commissioned by, when Mr. Baryshnikov was the director, so I was Mark's assistant on that, and I've staged that piece many times, actually.
So, okay. So you've touched on a couple of interesting things that we should talk about tonight, and that is, before video,
Oh, yeah.
dance was passed on by people with a good memory.
I know, yes, absolutely.
Like the remarkable Freddie Franklin, who could remember whole ballets.
And I guess I must have done the first couple of things without a video. I probably just, they were pieces that I had been in, and I
Did you
took
make notes as a dancer?
I didn't, but when I started staging things, then I would take
Make
notes.
notes, even when something was being created on you? Thinking down the line, no?
No, not so much. But as soon as the idea that it would be, well, actually, then we started using video more.
Pretty soon. Well, it used to be reel to reel, remember?
It was. I remember the big beta.
Right,
beta
and now we
tapes.
have iPads, and we can take them and look at them immediately. It's
Yeah.
just amazing. But yeah, it's very interesting how works were. I remember being in the quarter ballet of a company, and we revived something we hadn't done for 3 or 4 years, and somebody said, "I think it was this."
Oh, and then that's when the arguments start.
And then he said,
No, it was this. I
think
did
it
it
was
this way.
and then I said, no. It was, and then finally we'd be doing it, and then someone, I've got it, and they would be right.
yes.
The body would eventually remember.
You do. There is the muscle memory, the physical memory of the execution of the phrases and the steps. And I do find a DVD is a very valuable tool, but I actually do not use it in the studio with the dancers unless it's an emergency and I really can't remember, or I want to show them a spacing concept that I can't really get across verbally, because I want them to have the experience of physicalizing the work themselves without copying, because the DVD is just one performance or several performances, and if someone makes a mistake on the DVD, then it becomes part of the dance.
Right.
So
it's true.
it's like,
I mean, that happens.
No, don't fall down. That's not the choreography. So I don't want them to imitate. I want them to come to an understanding of the movement on their own in their bodies now. In what year is this? 2013.
2013.
Yeah. But I will occasionally. I mean, I use it when I'm making notes and preparing for rehearsal.
Were you around when Gong was created?
Yes.
Were you Mark's assistant?
I was Mark's assistant on Gong, and
that was in 2001?
We actually started in the summer of 2000. We had a rehearsal period, and then we came back in January of 2001, and Mark finished the piece, and it premiered at the Metropolitan Opera in May.
Now, when you did your sound, that was with ABT, the summer period?
Yes.
And this is influenced by Ballet? Gong.
Yes, the score, which I brought with me, Gong, the composer is Colin McPhee, and he wrote this piece in 1936, and he had actually just come back from being in Bali for 4 years and was very influenced by the sound of the gamelan and the percussive nature of the gamelan orchestras. So it's a Western orchestra playing, but it's definitely influenced by the rhythms of and the sounds of Bali.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And obviously the movement is,
the movement,
we'll see that.
Somewhat, but it is classical ballet.
Right. And the costumes?
The costumes are by the wonderful designer Isaac Mizrahi.
Who has a relationship with Mark? I mean,
yes.
They do a lot together.
They do now. We met Isaac. I think he started coming to shows because he liked the choreography. And then they started collaborating on costumes. I got to be in a couple of Isaac Mizrahi costumes, which was thrilling, yes. And he gave me a sketch that he had made, and it was me with my little hairdo, and it said, Tina, for instance. So I have that.
Tina, for instance?
Tina, for instance, yeah. That was a piece we did with Yo-Yo Ma.
So can we bring lights up on David a bit?
David.
I want to ask David about Gong and the orchestra.
David actually did the piano reduction of Gong, which I have right here. David did this. He's an amazing musician.
Well, how was that, doing a piano reduction?
Well, when Mark wanted to choreograph the ballet, Mark likes to work with a rehearsal piano, and this is an orchestral piece, and no piano reduction existed, so I spent many hours slaving over getting hand cramps. But
you did a good job.
Yeah, no, well, it's okay. Colin McPhee was a Canadian composer who, as Tina said, spent many years in Bali for professional and personal reasons. And he absorbed the Balinese rhythms and the scales. You'll hear.
What kind of instruments are in the orchestra pit?
The orchestra's huge. It's a Western orchestra, with full string section and full winds, lots of brass, much percussion, including tuned gongs, which is, I think, where the title comes from. Yeah. And 2 pianos, which for a Western orchestra give it that gamelan feel, sort of.
Right.
So it's a huge sound, and it's a beautiful piece.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
The music is very exciting.
I want to ask you a question. Were you there when Mark did his first piece on a ballet company? Was that a stretch for him? I mean,
no, he had studied ballet.
Right, clearly, because he teaches a wicked class,
and
right?
we all, that was our company class, was ballet class, yeah.
But still, point work, a lot of choreographers are very nervous about that.
No, he's not. No, he likes it.
No? So we're going to see a little bit of Gong, 3 sections. What's
yes,
the first section?
There's 3 musical sections. This is a very small segment from the first movement. It's actually the opening. And this is a spatial pattern that we've nicknamed the cascade. I'll let the movement speak for itself. Dancers, can you take the stage?
So that was the first, and now when that opens the whole piece?
That opens the whole ballet. This is actually ballet for 15 people, and that was just 5. There are 10 women and 5 men, and they work together in those particular units. These are the women in the small tutus, and then there's 5 women in big tutus, and 5 men.
And are they all in the opening, or is the opening?
Yes, so this is the opening, and then dancers come flying across the stage, but we couldn't really fit all of them on this stage. Right. Then we're going to show just a short segment from the second musical movement, the Nocturne. It actually starts with a trio of 2 men and 1 woman, and as they exit, these 5 women enter. And then there's a section that they're going to do one section and exit and then come back on and do something that actually happens later on in the second movement after the other people dance.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Somewhat.
Okay.
Yes.
When you come to Lincoln Center next week, it'll make more sense to you. Okay.
You see it.
Okay, here we go. Section.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right.
You did great work. Look
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing
All right.
the
Thank
rest
you,
of
John.
this. Bye. Oh, she's going. Perhaps she's performing again. I'd like to ask Susan to come back now. We're going to talk really about the media section of this evening's program, and that is the reconstruction of Twyla Tharp's Bach Partita. So this piece was last done
In 1985.
in 85.
Yeah, it was premiered in 83 in December at Kennedy Center, and we did it that year at the Met. And then we did it, it was performed all told, probably about 10, 12 performances only.
Well, only.
Yeah, I would estimate that, but it wasn't around very long, which was...
And we were talking before about the reasons.
Well, the partita is the partita in D minor. It's for solo violin, and it's very difficult to find someone who's equipped to play it artistically and the technique that it requires, and an artist that's also willing to compromise
To work with tempi that dancers need.
Yeah, the tempi and the support. It was choreographed to a Jascha Heifetz recording, and he was very well known for his incredible speed and dexterity, and it was a beautiful recording. But then when we got on stage with the violinist, there was a bit of a problem in going from that recording, to the real thing.
Can we bring David's lights up here for a second? Because that's kind of an interesting point. What is this, the tempi that Twyla needs? Are they unrealistic? Are they difficult? Are they more difficult than normal?
Yeah, I would say so. Like Susan said, the Jascha Heifetz recording it sounds very, very fast. And of course, he was a supreme technician.
Right.
So his take on it is controversial. Some people don't like it, but it's an incredibly impressive recording. And to find somebody who has that kind of technique, and like Susan said, is a little bit is malleable, is willing to make some compromises. And we fortunately, I think, found this young violinist, Charles Yang, who is amazingly
Superb.
gifted and who's going to do it for us.
What's his name?
Charles Yang.
Charles Yang.
Yeah.
Well, probably because he's young, he's malleable, right? It's always good to be young.
Well, he's also he does a million different things. Like, I think he's playing in the MTV Music Awards this weekend
really?
or something like that. So he does, and he writes his own songs and all that.
Did it take a while to find somebody who could do it? Did you have to hear a few people?
We had a few people that we listened to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to hearing him.
Yeah.
But there are also other reasons. It's a big ballet, right?
It's a very big ballet.
How big is it?
It's 3 principal couples, 7 soloist couples, and 16 women in the corps de ballet who don't come on until the last movement, the chaconne. But so we can't, we don't do a lot of rep at the Met. And City Center is just too small.
Met tends to be
so
3-act ballets.
Now that we're
So
at
here
the
we are.
Koch Theater, I was like, I've been plugging
So,
away to do
yeah,
this.
it came back because? Partly because of you, right?
Yeah, it's my fault. I was in London in like 98 or 99. We did Push Comes to Shove at the Royal Ballet. I staged it, and Twyla and I had dinner when it was going to premiere. She was there. And I said, we have these lousy videotapes, too. One of the performance, which is an archival video, black and white, it had faded, so it's very overexposed. You'll see in a second. I told them, don't fix it. Make it look as bad as it is. And we have a studio tape, which was done about, I would say about 9 days before the performance, and on a Saturday. And she decided over the weekend that she had to reconstruct the first movement in particular.
So Twyla took the video home with her, looked at it on the weekend.
Looked at it and decided that she decided that each principal couple should have a movement. So rather than start the ballet with all 3 principal couples, that she would start it with the soloists. So can we go to the first clip?
Well, let's talk a bit more before.
Okay, sorry.
So hang on. So she changed this. How soon before you opened?
We had a week to transfer the material that the principals were doing.
So they came in
to
Monday
the
morning.
soloist couples.
Well, I see.
They had some of them knew some of the root steps. But yeah, so we transformed it in a week, and we were going to retape it on the next Saturday, but all the equipment had been shipped down to Washington, so we never did. I don't know why we never did another studio recording.
Well, you tell a funny story though. So you said when you started working on this, it was reel-to-reel tape. Is that right?
Yeah, reel-to-reel
And
audio
you
tape.
were busy.
I was doing that. She also came in the first day. She said, "Do you read a score?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, here's the score. I'll do some phrases, and you tell me approximately how many phrases bars I have left." And so, I was doing all of this. I had only been ballet mastering for 4 years.
So you didn't have a chance to sit there and learn the choreography.
I didn't write it down, and I didn't write anything down then because I thought, I'm never going to forget this. I mean, I just didn't know that I'd be doing this and be over 60, so.
That's no excuse. So, now were you somebody who had a prodigious memory for steps?
I did, I think.
Yeah?
Like Tina.
Like
Tina.
Tina?
Yeah, I think.
Like Freddie, too?
Yeah, like Freddie. Well, Freddie was one of a kind,
Right.
but yeah.
And have you ever studied notation? Because there are 3 ways we pass ballets on. Was word of mouth from your memory. There was notation, which is laborious, expensive. Have you ever studied that?
I haven't. No, I actually wanted to study Banish, but I never could take the time away to do it.
And for years, ABT had a notation person, but there is none there now.
There's none there now.
Right.
Occasionally they come and
They
will
come and
stage something, but.
So most of us rely on video. So can you point out,
Yes, that's
can
true.
you point out what are the downfalls of video, besides the fact that we record a mistake, which is there for posterity?
Yeah, that can be. I mean, actually in reference to that, part of the advantage of being at Ballet Theater is that I can look at a tape and I pretty much know what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
But in this case, the quality of the videos was so poor. As I've been watching the tapes and I wrote out and notated in my own personal notation. I've been watching for over 1.5 years in my spare time. To prepare for this, because it's just huge. It's 30 minutes. It's that for a Twyla ballet, that's a 2-act ballet for anybody else.
It's very dense.
Very dense, yeah, and very difficult. And the standard with the original cast was very, very high. Right. And I'm not as young as I used to be, so I really needed to study this. As I watched it, the material, I began to recognize what I had forgotten.
Body memory.
And you sort of.
Muscle memory.
Well, yeah, what's left of it.
But videos are shot, the camera is the point, the focal point. Everything points towards that. When we're on a stage, we have a front that is as wide as a proscenium.
Right.
But videos are notoriously difficult to find stage placement in, of a group of people.
Right.
And we'll really see that here because
in the studio
in
too.
the studio,
it's from
most studios to this day, to shoot a video, you have to go to the corner.
Right.
Almost no video works from dead on in the studio. So you have to work with that, with the mystery of the stage placement. And then videos are 2-dimensional, they're not 3-dimensional, and bodies are 3-dimensional.
Right.
So you can't kind of peek around the corner and see what's going on.
Yeah. Well, just to set up the first clip that you're going to see.
This is quite something.
It's a studio clip of the first movement. The original principals were in this clip are Martine Van Hamel and Clark Tippett, Magali Messack and Robert LaFosse. I don't think that from the look of the video, they had not worked this section out conclusively. And then 2 days later, they got changed anyway to different parts. But, and then I think maybe Cynthia Gregory and Fernando Bujones also were the third couple. So now this is not to embarrass anyone that's in the tape. There are moments where they just have near misses, and one of the dancers is marking because she had a bad back, and another one, this is the kind of thing that I had to dig deep to look at and find the root material.
Right.
So I had the units of choreography, and then I could look at the stage recording and sort of compare and figure out what they were meant to be doing. But this is, if we could play the first clip, please.
This is in American Ballet Theater Studios.
So there's Martine and Clark on your left.
Clark's
And,
in
well,
yellow.
now they've come closer. Megley Massac. And so you see already, I mean, it's because it's blowing up, it's a bit blurry, but it's also green. And way back in the corner, you see Susan Jaffe and Victor Barbie, and they're actually doing what the soloist couples ended up doing. But so we can move on, I think. I'll show you more things. They bump into each other.
Now,
Anyway.
is there a reason the floor is marked like that, or is that for something else?
I think, yeah, I have no idea what it was for. But in the performance clip, you'll see that this is the very opening of the ballet, which that was as well. You'll see only two couples, and they were two. That was Nancy Raffa, Susan Jaffe, with Victor Barbie and Craig Wright. And so they opened the ballet, not the principals.
But that was the week
Not
before.
what we,
That's
yeah,
what it was going to open.
Yeah, the studio was the week before. So if we could just, and you'll see how horrendous the videotape is.
This
This is the very, this is the Met.
The Met?
So I've been losing my eyesight essentially for a year and a half. I can get it to look a little bit better than this. Eventually, on the next passage of this theme, Martine and Clark come out. So the first movement became their movement. The second movement became Cynthia and Fernando's, and the third movement is all the principals, and then Megley and Robbie were in the fourth. So I think we
So
can.
these are the two soloist couples.
These are the two
open.
soloist couples. I think Martine and Clark are coming in here soon. Here they come. So it has been, needless to thank you, it has been a tremendous challenge, just to decipher it, and then to also set it.
So what if 6 people look that fuzzy? What's it like when 25 people are on stage? Is it fuzzier?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, did you dance in this piece?
No, I
didn't?
didn't. I had retired 4 years earlier.
So of course.
So it's not
you
really
didn't
in
have
my
it
muscle
in-
memory
no.
at all. But it's after you watch it time and time again, and you figure out what people are supposed to be doing.
So
it's a lot of
you put
material.
it together, and then Twyla came in.
Twyla's been in for the last 3 weeks,
How long did you work on it before she came in?
2 weeks.
And when she came in, did she say, "I recognize none of this," or "Oh yes"?
Well, she
or
did. No. She had done her homework too a little bit.
did?
She had watched the
So
tapes before
the
she
same
came in.
tapes?
Yeah, the same tapes,
Uh-huh.
which they do look somewhat better on a
Yeah.
on a computer, but not terrific. And so she didn't know, step for step, but she knows her movements. So she's been so far very pleased, and we're really excited. Next week, Charles Yang will be working with us next week in the studio, and I can't wait to see it all come together.
Wow, you must feel very proud of this. It's like your baby
It's
coming.
my baby a
Yeah.
little bit, yeah. Yeah, I think Twyla would agree with that too. I really have been wanting, I didn't want it to get lost. And although she has many people that work for her that are brilliant, brilliant people, I just don't think they could really set the ballet and do justice to it, having not ever had contact with it,
Right.
given the sources that we have for it.
Right.
So
this is one of. I talked a bit about the fall season at the Koch Theater. It's pretty extraordinary. Can you go through the rep and how many pieces are you on? Which are your
because
ballets?
Bach Partita has taken so much of my time, I'm only working on it and Les Sylphides. We're doing Month in the Country. We're doing Clear.
That's revived for the first time. There was premiere.
It was premiered at the Met, and I'm really happy that we're doing it again. We're doing world premiere of Alexei Ratmansky's The Tempest
That's pretty exciting.
to Sibelius. And
reviving his piano concerto.
piano concerto, we're doing theme and variations, we're doing Clear, as you know, and Gong, as you know, and Morse Pavane. And what else did I forget?
I think that's it.
think
There's not
that's
much
it.
time for anything else.
No, I don't know what's happening in the other rooms. I haven't seen a
it's
step of
tremendously-
anything other
tremendously
than Bach
exciting.
chords. I sing Bach all the time in my head.
I'm sure it stays with you.
Anyway.
We're going to watch now an excerpt from Clear, another excerpt from Clear, and this is the Duet for Two Men, which is really beautiful. We actually did a works in process, I guess it was 2001. Seems
So we
not that
can
long
take
ago.
the screen up,
And-
right?
Yes, so we can take this. Oh, we were going to show.
We were, but
Yeah, why don't we show it?
we're going to show it? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There's a special treat here. We have, just to remember how incredibly good a dancer he was. Can we show the last clip? Do we know?
Yeah,
what we're
it's
gonna see?
in the chaconne. There's 7 minutes into the final movement, there's a change to D major. And it was an adagio, a very short adagio choreographed for Fernando Bujones. And we actually have a little bit better quality studio tape of it, and I wanted to show it to you. So if we could play that last clip. Oops, okay.
That's
Yeah,
it?
he has a bad moment actually after that.
Oh, he does?
He would be pleased that we stopped it. But
Wow.
it was special, and it was unusual that such a classical technician, he was a wonderful artist, but also just technically perfect. To work with Twyla Tharp was such an adventure for him, and what came out of it was really beautiful.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. He was quite some
yeah,
dancer.
yeah.
Okay, so we're going to see now a little bit more from Clear. This is a duet for two men, and our principal lady comes in and out. I think the first time this was ever shown in public was here in this theater. And Stanton did a works in process when Clear was being put together. So let's look at this movement, second movement of Clear by Stanton Welch, also to Bach. Daniel Manti and Tom Forster doing the second movement of Clear. I'd like to invite Clinton Luckett, ballet master from ABT, to come up and talk about Clear. So, Clear is your ballet.
Yes.
Is this the first season it's been your ballet, or have you been in charge of it every time it's been revived?
Yeah, my first year as a ballet master was 2006, and it was in my very first season. It was the first ballet that I really worked on, so I took it over sort of straight away.
But were you dancing in 2001?
I was dancing, yes.
So you were around. Were you in Clear when it was premiered?
No, I'd just come back from a pretty serious injury, and I only had one more year left in my career at that point, and I wasn't really able to do a ballet like Clear anymore.
Were you around at the premiere?
I was, yes.
It was quite some night, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was exciting. The original cast was Angel Correa, who I'm sure many of you remember, and it was really
Julie Kent and
Julie Kent.
Joaquin Duluth.
The two men there that you just saw originally was Maxime Beloserkovsky and Marcelo Gomez. So it was quite a power-packed cast, and it was 7 men, totally exposed physically, and just sort of all-out dancing. So it was thrilling.
When you see the whole thing together, it's quite virtuosic, right? Yeah. And it's interesting, costume-wise, these days of Project Runway, the person who did the costume was
Michael Kors.
Michael Kors. And they couldn't be simpler. But it's interesting. I don't want to put words in Stanton's mouth, but Stanton was doing a series of ballets, and they had color as a title. Orange was one he did for Judy Fugate's company,
right.
and I think he did one for San Francisco with a color. But anyway, I don't know how much of this was formulated before, but 9/11 happened just before he began work on this piece. And it very much influenced the piece. And I believe the word clear was his sense that it was the purest way he could express the redemptive power of love after 9/11, and I think Clear was the last in the series of colors, because there's no color.
Yeah. Well, we're actually going to watch another little excerpt here, because interestingly enough, in the fall, the ballet premiered at City Center, in our City Center season in the fall of 2001, which was right after 9/11 happened. And we're going to see a little clip here from a Guggenheim that happened that fall. Right. There was a Guggenheim on October 8th, so it's less than 4 weeks after 9/11. And he was in the process of creating the ballet at that time, and he actually, I've watched the whole tape many times of the entire Guggenheim that evening, and he had, like, in that section, each dancer do it separately, and then he combined them together for the first time on this stage. And
he did it in public, which was really,
so.
It was fantastic of him. I think very courageous of him to do that.
A lot of choreographers, have trouble showing their work in public when it's still in process or unfinished. But he didn't have any qualms about that, which was really nice, because it gave the people there a chance to see his process. And you'll see a little bit of that. And he talks very, I think, beautifully about what it means to him after this excerpt.
So actually what we're going to do now is bid you farewell. We'll watch Stanton's tape and then watch the whole last pas de deux?
So the ballet, the ending of the ballet, it's actually two pieces of music. The first 3 movements of the ballet, of which you just saw the second movement, is a concerto for oboe and violin. And then he chose to finish the ballet with 2 movements from a violin concerto. So the last movement of the ballet, which is the 5th movement, is an adagio movement. And it finishes with this very, very elegiac, spiritual kind of pas de deux, which we will see Paloma Herrera and Sasha Radetsky perform. But before we see that, we're going to just look at a little snippet of the 2001 Guggenheim where Stanton's talking about the ballet, and you see a little bit of Gillian Murphy and Ethan Stiefel were the second cast of the original version, and you see just a little bit of them doing the part of the Adagio.
So before we bid you farewell, I want to thank you for coming tonight. I want to thank our panelists, Clinton, Susan, and Tina.
Thank you.
And I want to encourage you to come to the Koch Theater and see this unbelievable ABT program, 2 weeks, a week and a half of stunning ballets.
Yes.
All different combinations of wonderful works. So let's enjoy now this last pas de deux from Clear.
So let's just start with the beginning, and I'm not going to let them do the whole thing because this is kind of the end of the ballet, and I don't want to give that entirely away. So we're just going to do the first little part. Normally with the pas de deux, I save them for, I do them first because they take the longest time and you're never really sure of the dynamic you're going to have, but we found that we did this so quickly that it's actually quite ready, I hope. I think, or it was yesterday. Thank you. Okay, thank you. In casting the ballet, I looked for ladies with Gillian that had this very tranquil and feminine quality about them. So even though they come in and out of each of the movements with these men being quite frantic, that they're always this calm, steady line that takes them to where hopefully they'll be by the last pas de deux.
You were talking about the emotional content of a ballet. You haven't talked to them about it yet. Is there something you can tell us about it?
Yeah, I don't really talk to the dancers about it until very close to the end because I think that is part of the development process. That sometimes if you say to a dancer, you know, you're going to be the fiery one, and they think fiery and they come in and they're doing every rehearsal like this, and you're like, no, I wanted to kind of sculpt you where you wanted to go. So if you just do it as it naturally comes, you can cater the emotions to what and how they express, because not everyone expresses the same way. Someone can show anger with just a raised eyebrow, and someone needs to really use their whole body, and that is a very personal thing. And that's why often between the different casts, I will allow different steps or timing or even a position to allow them to express what is the ultimate aim. And what is the emotion of it? Well, I think that I'm telling them.
You said animals before, you said fiery people, you said tranquil.
I definitely, it's finding this clear line.
We don't usually associate too much emotion with Bach. I don't. Maybe it's me. Is it? Whoops. David's going.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends. I had this exact discussion with someone the other night, and no, it's different, but there's an emotion in it that it's a reserved emotion, and that is what the woman is representing. This kind of, it's emotional, but it's It's inside. It's a controlled thing. And I think that, I mean, the end of the last partita is her taking him and calming him, changing him. How love can calm you down in some way. Mm-hmm. I think that's all so far. We're only 10 minutes into the ballet.